Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Kane Audio vlog. Today I'm going to be looking at Bitwig 2, which is out right now. I will be honest and say that I'm filming this a few days before release. I'm lucky enough to have been one of the alpha testers and beta testers for Bitwig, so I've had a couple of advanced copies. This is the latest beta version that I'm using now, so on the day of me uploading this video and it coming out, there might be a couple of changes here and there, but they're hopefully going to be completely insignificant, and I'm hoping nobody will notice, but I'm just going to put that out there just in case. So I've been using it a few months and it's pretty solid. Bitwig for me, I've been using for well, since it started in 2014, and actually beforehand because I was beta testing that as well. But for me, Bitwig is the one I go to for my own personal productions, and when I'm writing. I was traditionally an Ableton user before that, Cubase SX, and I've always used Pro Tools for mixing, and I've quite often used Logic for bits and pieces, usually when a client uses Logic. So I've kind of got experience of most of the main DAWs. The first thing I'll say though is that if you're a Bitwig 1 user, you're not going to notice huge changes. I was kind of expecting it to have more fundamental differences. I don't even know what I thought there'd be, but I don't know. I felt like it was almost an anticlimax at the beginning, if I'm brutally honest, because I felt like, this is Bitwig, this is how I know it, you know. So there's a few key differences. So your startup page, you'll be given this, which will show you your recent projects, which is just a little dashboard. I quite like that. You'll have noticed, if you're a Bitwig 1 user, you'll notice some of these buttons at the top of the screen have sort of moved around. Nothing fundamental. You've still got the clips screen where you can do your clips, you can group tracks, and then set the levels and apply effects and whatever to each individual within a group, and then you can minimize and maximize those things as you'd expect, and you can see layers of effects and pop them open and whatever in the clip view. And then when we go to arrangement view, it's all very familiar. So one of the things they've introduced is there are a few new devices that they've dropped in. So for example, the phaser, I know that's new. They've also added a pitch shifter, which is slightly different to the frequency shifter. I think the blur tool is new, which is kind of like a chorus stereo type thing. We'll get to that in a bit. There's also a couple of little devices like Tree Monster. I dropped this in the first time I saw it. I thought, what the hell is that? And I dropped it in on a track and then thought, what the hell is this? And then looked up on the Bitwig website thinking, well, what are they calling it? What's it for? And their description basically leaves you going, what the hell is that? And when you hear it in action, you'll know exactly why. There is no description to it. There's a couple of other really good things that they've put in for me personally. They've got the hardware section where you've got hardware clock out, CV instrument, CV out, effects and instruments, obviously, which we always had. There's a couple of things like that they've dropped in that really are handy if you use hardware, especially if you use modular stuff and you want to fire off modular stuff from inside Bitwig to a modular system and then back again. You've got the CVs to be able to do that, so the control voltage to triggers. There's a bunch of stuff like MIDI CC is now a device, which for me is phenomenal, and I think that makes me want to suggest that this could be really good for people looking to do a live show, because having things like MIDI CC as a device means that you can start mapping all your CC values digitally to a device, and know that every time you drop that device on a particular channel, it's going to control particular MIDI commands for whatever device. So it's hard to explain until you do it, but hopefully you know what I mean. Right, so yeah, so I'll start with this thing that I've put together. I'll just solo a few tracks and show you what I've got. So I've got a basic bass note. It's all very standard. I've got an arpeggiator going on over here. It's quiet. There's nothing particularly fancy over there, but you will notice in the EQ, for example, it'll give me a graphic equalizer when I play it, and that can be very handy. And you'll notice on a lot of their devices, the compressors, the EQs, I think even the reverb does it, so you get that graphic equalizer built in, and that is really, really handy. This tree monster, I've obviously dropped one in over here and then switched it off, but I'll show you that. So I'll play it and then switch it on. So it's just mental, but I have used it on one of the other sounds, I think, and actually kept it. So you're gonna find yourself dropping it on the odd thing, going, oh, I wonder how this sounds. I'll be honest, 50-50. It's hit and miss. A lot of the times I've dropped it on something and I've gone, oh, this is just terrible. This is just too far. But we'll get to that. Then I've got a rotary, which I've often used in Bitwig 1, and then obviously a tool just to control the amplitude. I've got another sound over here that is essentially just a stretched out tone. But you can see I've used Tree Monster in this. And I've fiddled with some of the settings, so I've increased the ring modulation. I think I've automated the speed of it as well, and then kept the pitch at the same value. And then I've also got a ring modulator, and I've used some macros on that as well to automate frequency. What else have I got? Oh, there's a spectrum analyzer, which is great. So I'll play that and you can see it. So what I've done is I've basically kind of added a bit of random noise and depth and everything to that stretched out sound by using that Tree Monster and automating just a couple of the dials, and it was completely at random, which is great, and it just adds a little bit of depth to it. I'll skip that channel because I'll come back to that. Then I've put in some relatively basic drums. I've played with some EQs over time, did try a compressor, didn't like it. So I used transient control. I'll probably do another video on that, actually, using transient controls instead of a compressor. It can be quite good. Spectrum analyzer, and then multi-band effects. So it's pretty basic kick, and I think there's a couple of clicks or something I put in there. Yeah, so pretty standard. And then I add in some hats later on with a little bit of reverb. I played around with the late delays and stuff of that hi-hat, so it's almost like a swooshing in between each hi-hat, like that, and then some claps. Claps are claps. So I'll come back to this channel, which is the one where I think I probably used most of the bizarre things. You can see there's a whole load of stuff going on here. And this is one of the things I've got to say about the whole Bitwig system and the modulators is it's really only limited by what you're willing to try. So it can make things, you know, sometimes you'll find yourself going, oh, I wish I knew how to do this. Well, you might not be able to do that with Bitwig because it's quite trial and error in some ways. But you will find the more you start to use these modulators and stuff, the more you start to realise there's this whole world of capabilities out there, and this is where it starts getting a bit complex, I suppose. So if I take all of these devices off, and I'll show you the original. So I've dropped in an instance of Massive here. Yeah, I can't deactivate that modulator, I don't think, without changing stuff. So let me just show you what that is. So what I've got here, well, let me just play you this as it is. That's it. It's pretty impressive, huh? So you know, you can hear it's just a blip. What I've done though is, as with, so this is what Massive would look like when you drop it in. It's just the box, and you've got all the assignable macros, and if you want, you can assign these macros to parameters within Massive if you so wish. On every device, and this is always been the case with Bitwig 1 as well, on every device you'll have this box here, show remote controls, and these are basically assignable macros. They look a little bit different to Bitwig 1, but that's essentially what we had. What you've now got here is adding modulators, and they've changed the whole visual layout of these things. So what I've done is, if I click on that dice, it's a randomizer. So you can choose different waveforms and how I guess any harmonics of that waveform, and then obviously the amount and the rate of how random things are, and a trigger. So I've set a trigger to be a note, so every time Massive has that bleep, it's going to completely randomize, and you can see this line that's moving across here. It's just randomly choosing a level, and that's assigned to the oscillator's waveform. So the waveform I've chosen in Massive is a saw square. So what this is doing is just randomly, every time a note is triggered, it's just randomly changing the note. And you heard it almost go into saw there. And I'd love to be able to show you a better example, but it's randomized, so that's kind of the beauty of it, I suppose. So I've done that, and then I've added in this blur tool. I don't think I've touched anything in here. So you can hear that's just playing with like a stereo chorus effect. Then I've added in some reverb, but with the reverb I've now set another randomizer, and the randomizer is playing with the reverb time. So you can see that that's over there. So if I play that, so you can hear the reverb time is changing with every bleep, and it's just something completely at random for no reason. And then I started getting a little bit darker into it, and what I've done is I've dropped in another new device, which is the MIDI Echo. So you drop this in before your VST because it's a MIDI effect rather than an audio effect, so it needs the input of the device rather than the output of the device. So it takes that one note of a blip and then provides an echo, but inside that I have then used all sorts of effects like randomizers and an LFO, and they're all completely all over the place on things like the note lengths, the number of repetitions and things like that. And then I've played around with, you can see the repetitions here that is assigned, and I've played around with a couple of these so that the pitch goes to -9 semitones, and again all of these are randomized functions, and they're all kind of interconnected with each other, and that gives me this. So it's a bit bonkers, really. So if I just unsolo that, and I'll just leave it play for a bit so you can hear what I've got going on. So there we go, you can hear it's all very, very random. And so I'll just show you these modulators. I won't actually do anything with them, but basically you can, so in fact if I show you on a new, let's choose the hats for example. So we'll go into the hats and we'll click on that, so we can see pre-built on the internal devices. You can see there are loads of macros you can play around with, but you can reassign them. You can, for example, just add a new page and then assign your own if that's what you wanted to do. We've then got the modulators here, so you can click on the plus sign and then you can add an envelope follower, for example. Probably not the best one to choose for this device, but then you could apply an envelope follower to control the reverb time, for example. And then I'm guessing if I play that, yeah, there we go. So you can see it's following the envelope and it's changing the reverb time. So you can, for example, if I whack that right up just for the sake of nothing and just as a bigger visual effect. And there you go. I mean, we could inverse that, I suppose, and see what that does. That basically kills the reverb. Fair enough. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do here, and like I say, it's really sort of, it's only limited to by what you can imagine doing, and that for me is what makes Bitwig the ultimate DAW for my own productions, because as you'll know from previous videos, you know, I quite enjoy sometimes just switching things up a bit, and you'll have noticed I build my my hi-hats quite often from white noise, and I'll have randomized functions and triggers in there so that they kind of just develop on their own accord. So for anyone who's looking to make music that has a sort of, I want to say a humanistic approach, but it's almost inhuman, I suppose, the approach. It's almost randomized robotics, but without getting into the philosophy of it all. For me, Bitwig is the ultimate package where, like I say, I'm just free to do whatever I want, and I can sit there and experiment with stuff, and for me that makes making music fun. And you know, I think sometimes a lot of people get worked up on, oh, I must sound like so and so, oh, I have to do this because this is what pleases crowds. I disagree with that. I think actually if you're writing music, you should write it for yourself. You know, you should do what you enjoy, and part of that is just having fun in the process of putting these things together. And yeah, and I think Bitwig is the ultimate experience in writing music, and I don't think I've ever been able to say that about any sort of production software before, that it's actually an enjoyable experience to use, and that's what makes the whole creative process worthwhile. So I hope that's kind of covered pretty much most of the key features. What I will do before I go, I did have here, and in fact if you go to the Bitwig website, you can see there's a little demo video of a sort of advertising one, It'll show you the modulators, and you can see each and every one of those things that I was just showing you. You can see there's step sequences, there's ADSRs, there's analog ADSRs, there's all sorts of LFOs and performance patterns and CC functions. You know, there really is a whole world of modulation out there, and I've not even scratched the surface in this video. So you've got your spectrum analyzer, your phaser, your pitch shifter, your tree monster. There's MIDI note harmonizers, multi-note, note length. You can read the website yourself. And then if you look at the modulators, again, this kind of shows you in more detail of what each one looks like. So you saw I had this Beat LFO on one of my devices. And yeah, so that's basically it. Like I say, check it out on their website. It's well worth looking at. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope it sort of opens a few eyes to what Bitwig has to offer. This video has not in any way been endorsed or sponsored by them. It's just part of my vlog. I use Bitwig for all of my stuff, and I thought you guys would be interested to see kind of some of the new features, and I suppose how I approach those as well. So I hope you guys like. Please like, comment, subscribe, get involved, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.